Hello there and welcome to a quick guide showcasing the best layouts to organize your hybrid breeding gardens in Animal Crossing New Horizons based on what flowers you're trying to breed and what your specific goals are. Before we start, let's get a little housekeeping out of the way first. Yes, you can absolutely just go to some online marketplace and purchase certain flowers off other players or take some flowers from friends, but this guide is geared towards people who actually want to grow their flowers themselves and optimize their gardens, or towards people who may not have an online subscription and can't visit other towns online. Also, to give credit where credit is due, the data from this video has been put together from the ACNH flower research document produced by Aeter and the rest of the Garden Council there. So a huge thanks to them for their dedicated research and data mining. A link to that document can be found in the video description. So to get started, let's first look at this cross grid and explain why you shouldn't be using it if you want to grow more hybrids. So when you first load up the game on a new day, the game will decide which flowers will produce a new offspring. If a flower is chosen, say this yellow rose, then the game next checks to see if there's another rose touching it that it can crossbreed with. If there isn't, then the offspring will be a clone. If there is, then the offspring will inherit genetics from both parents. Both of the parents will then be locked from potentially crossbreeding until the next day, meaning that if any of the other three roses choose to breed, then they'll simply clone themselves. Now you could scale up the checkerboard pattern to decrease the chance of this happening, but since there's so many blank spaces in this layout, it's really not efficient or compact at all. Don't get me wrong, it works, but since you're here watching a video about flower layouts, I'm sure you're looking for a more efficient and optimized layout. The layout that you'll want to use in order to be more efficient depends on what your goal is. So we'll start with breeding flowers that use the same parents, such as 2 white chrysanthemums to make a purple. The smallest and most simple layout is just a 2x2 square of flowers. This means that if any particular pair of flower is chosen to crossbreed, then the other pair are still also available. What's also good about this method is that you can stack it together with multiple species to keep it compact. For example, breeding red roses together to try and get blacks. Since the chrysanthemums and the roses can't crossbreed with each other, it's completely safe. If you have more space, however, and your goal is to try and breed many more hybrids per day, you might want to try a layout such as the grid pattern. While at first it looks like it's not efficient at all, it's actually far better than the checkerboard since every flower is touching between 2 to 6 potential partners, and there's a far lower chance of a flower cloning itself. This layout is simple, repeats infinitely to fill your space, and works well if you either water your flowers yourself or have help from visitors. If you want to increase efficiency a little more, however, you can offset every other grid hole by 1 space, creating the turtle pattern. It's less simple to create, and I recommend putting dirt down underneath the parents to keep track of which ones you don't want to dig up, but it has the potential to produce more offspring than the original grid pattern. Again, this works well both watering yourself or with visitor help. If you have more space available, then you can repeat this pattern infinitely to create the super turtle, which works best for a large space with 3 or more visitors watering your flowers for you. If, however, you plan on having 1, 2, or no visitors watering for you, then you're better off using a hex hole pattern, which is essentially a large version of the grid, but with holes offset by 1 space every other row. This has less spawning spaces for new offspring than the super turtle, but more flowers are packed in since the spawn rates will be lower due to less visitors warning, and it's slightly more efficient than a large version of the grid. Okay, so they were your options for layouts for when the hybrids you want come from parents of the same colour. But what if you want flowers that come from 2 different colours? Say for example, a pink chrysanthemum, which is made from red and white. Well, my favourite method to use is the independent pairs, where you plant your parents down and leave a blank space around them entirely for ultimate controlled breeding. And similarly to the 2x2 grid method that I showed earlier, if you're tight on space, you can mix other species in between the gaps of the independent pairs since they won't cross with each other. The diamond layout is another option that has the same benefit as the 2x2 grid, since if a pair of flowers here produces an offspring, there's always a second pair available to do the same no matter which original pair breeds. My favourite thing about this layout is that if you overlap another diamond of a different species, then you get a very compact plot that you can produce 4 offspring with no chance of duplication, and all of the flowers can be watered in 2 swings of a watering can. Both the diamond and the intertwined diamonds can be extended, but you risk converting your layout into the checkerboard pattern, which, as we discussed earlier, is typically ineffective. Finally, let's talk about cloning layouts. Perhaps you've got one blue rose and you want to make more, or green mums, or purple pansies. As mentioned earlier, if a parent chooses to produce an offspring and it has no partner on a tile touching it, then the offspring will be a clone of the parent, which is a new mechanic to the Animal Crossing series. This is particularly helpful for flowers that usually have a very low rate of spawning, such as the 1 in 64 method of obtaining a blue rose. The most simple way to clone is by making a grid similar to the independent pairs, but with only one flower. This gives each flower lots of space to produce a potential clone. Another option is by making a 2-wide block of different flowers that you want to duplicate. As long as no flower that is touching is of the same species, then any flower that produces an offspring here will always result in a clone. So there you have it. Hopefully this video has helped you out in picking which layout is best suited to your needs and your goals. If you enjoyed it, then feel free to drop a like on the video, it definitely helps me out, and maybe consider subscribing for some more Animal Crossing New Horizons guides and playthrough content. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you next time.